Hi there, and welcome back to Mean Green Game Day. I'm your host, Michelle Brooks, and I'm joined by these awesome guys, Justin Blue, Jalen Jackson, and Connor Hibbett. Now, we're glad to be back. We didn't know whether or not we would be here, but now there's some looming questions about the Mean Green. We were 1-6, and now we're 5-6 suddenly. 4-game winning streak. Has UNT progressively gotten better, or has our conference opponents just gotten worse? Justin, what do you think?
Well, we talked about how tough this non-conference schedule was for the Mean Green. We played at SMU, we played at Missouri, we played Liberty at home. That was really tough. We were going to struggle during that schedule no matter what. I actually think with our Conference USA schedule, on the other hand, that we lucked out. We got Rice, we got Southern Miss, and we got FIU all on the back end of that schedule towards the end of the regular season. So, you know, UNT got to play the stronger teams like UAB, Marshall, UTEP, UTSA today at home, whereas they're going to these road environments like Southern Miss, Rice, and FIU that have absolutely no crowd at all, no environment in those teams at all. So they got the crowd on their side for all those big home games and then got to travel to road environments that didn't have any crowd at all. So I think we lucked out with the conference schedule.
No, and I can see that it makes sense that we would come. I mean, did you guys see the crowd at that game? But they zoomed out and there was no one in the stands. Granted, it was raining, but that being said, crazy. So let's talk about some key players then that did it for that UNT offense. Our running game was off the charts. DeAndre Torrey and Ragsdale. Let's go into it, Connor. How did their performance?
Well, you're playing against a Florida International team who struggled to stop the run, especially as of late. So it felt like a game, and we talked about that before the game, how UNT's offensive line was in a matchup that heavily favored them, and so, of course, the running backs are going to have a good day for it. But, yeah, obviously you give the running backs credit, but let's also give some credit to the big boys up front. They've been great for us all season long. We've been inconsistent. We've had our ups and downs, but I think the offensive line has been one thing that we can kind of tip our cap to, that we've been able to kind of lean on them all season long.
They have, and FIU has one of the worst rush defenses in the nation. But this was a historic game for DeAndre Torrey. During this game, he eclipsed 1,000 career yards in his career at UNT. He moved into third place on UNT's all-time list with 33 rushing touchdowns and tied third place on the Mean Green all-time list with 38 career total touchdowns. So again, great stuff out of DeAndre Torrey, great stuff from this offensive line, great stuff out of all of these guys in the backfield. UNT struggled to run the ball against UTEP. It was a huge problem in that game. No problem against FIU at all. DeAndre Torrey, Ikaika Ragsdale, both over 100 yards in this game. UNT ran the ball with 8 different ball carriers in this game, ran for 378 total yards on over 6.5 yards a carry on the ground, and scored 5 rushing touchdowns. FIU ran the ball 26 times for 58 yards. So UNT outrushed them in this game by 320 yards. With how well we were running the ball, I think we might have been able to win this game without throwing a pass. That's how good it was.
Well, with Ikaika Ragsdale coming into this team, it's his second recorded game with over 100 yards. Jalen, how do you feel about him developing as a player? I mean, moving forward into next season, this is very reassuring for the team.
It actually is very reassuring, but I think that, you know, he has to step up after, you know, once we lose DeAndre Torrey, somebody has to come up and take up that spot, pick up that slack, because it clearly does not look like we were doing it in the passing game. So that is he's gonna pick up slack where we lose DeAndre Torrey, and when he graduates, we're gonna have that guy pull up, and he's gonna be the new running game if we can't get the pass together.
Well, Jalen, you brought up, you know, we're not getting the job done as much in the passing game, but we've won 4 straight now with Austin Aune at quarterback. Granted, he had 2 interceptions last game. Connor, how do you feel about Austin Aune? Is he improving, or is it another situation where strength of schedule comes into play?
I think it's strength of schedule, but I think another thing, and I pointed this out last week, I think the coaching staff has done a good job adjusting to the players that UNT currently has on the roster, which is, okay, our strength is the offensive line. We have some good running back. We have some good depth at the running back position, and Aune's been inconsistent throwing the football. So I think the coaching staff did a good job adjusting to their strengths and saying, okay, let's rely on the running game, and let's have Aune play the role as a game manager. And then, of course, against Florida International, you can hit some big plays. But I'm not going to say Aune's totally impressed me as a true a guy who's truly taken that next step up. but I think he's done his job. But at least he's not turning the ball over at the rate that he was to begin with. But I think that's an adjustment from the coaching staff.
Have a day, Austinani. This was one of the best games of his entire career. Only 6 of 12 on completions, but those 6 completions went for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged over 18 yards a completion in this game and also added a rushing touchdown to go along with it. He connected with Roderick Burns, his favorite target, as always, for 3 catches for Roderick Burns, 106 yards, and a long 55-yard touchdown pass. Now, FIU's defense, as I mentioned, is one of the worst in the entire FBS. But nonetheless, good performance from Austinani. Good to get him back in some rhythm in this ballgame.
And FIU and Southern Miss play each other today, so it should be really interesting to see who wins that game because those two teams have struggled mightily this year.
That will definitely be a game to watch, even though you wouldn't ordinarily think to watch some of the lower teams in a conference play. Now, guys, I want to talk about the implications that this 4-win game streak has on Seth Luttrell moving forward. I know I'm putting you guys on the spot, but all season long we've kind of talked about where he stands in this program. Struggling hasn't been the best. Moving forward, we could be bowl eligible as of today if we come out from it. So how do you guys feel about Seth Luttrell's position? Are y'all still not about him?
You know, I never had a doubt about him as a quarterback, as a coach. But I do believe that we have issues, which is the majority of the quarterback problem that we've been having the whole time. And once we were able to solve that, and clearly we found it in Austinani as we've progressed through this season. You know, he's taken a lot of slack off of, Seth Luttrell should be in the hot seat or not. I mean, we started off pretty bad, but I don't think that was a coaching thing. I think that was an effort thing as a team, if that makes sense.
And a strength of schedule. It was
very
very top-heavy to begin the season. Those 6 of the first 7 teams we played actually had votes in the preseason AP Top 25. They weren't ranked. Only SMU of those teams was ranked at some point in the season, but 6 of those first 7 opponents were ranked had a vote for the preseason AP Top 25. So I think it really was the strength of the schedule that affected UNT's overall record at the time.
And the win last weekend actually means that UNT, regardless of today's result against UTSA, will finish 3rd in the West Division. Given the 1-6 start, everybody was low on this team. We were, talking down on them. Really improved. I mean, to be in a position where you're going for bowl eligibility in the last week of the season, given the 1-6 start, is incredible. This is their first 4-game win streak, also since 2013 when they won 5 straight games. So if they can get that 5th straight win, they would tie that record that they had 8 years ago.
Well, we've definitely seen improvement out of UNT, but there's been a lot of other teams in Conference USA that we've seen improve throughout the season. Stay with us and we'll break that down.
Every year, 40% of all food in the U.S. never gets eaten.
40%. That's almost half the food we produce.
Food waste is a serious problem. It impacts all of us.
And it's expensive. Your family is throwing $1,500 a year in the trash.
We're working hard to put food waste on the chopping block.
And you can do the same at home.
Learn how to cook it, store it, and share it.
Just don't waste it.
Go to savethefood.com.
Oh, emojis! I thought the conversation just got dumber.
Ugh, internet trolls, just ignore them.
I like you just the way you are.
I believe in you! She's a hugger. Give her a squeeze.
Help up the hand.
Ah, there you go.
Thanks, mate.
You're killing it, Jane!
How's your hair? Is it pretty?
Daddy.
It's pretty.
Maybe honestly, Maybe honestly,
Hi there and welcome back to Mean Green Game Day. We're glad y'all are with us this far. It's been a long season and it's been a big season for a lot of teams in the conference. We're going to break down some teams that have really improved. I mean, I'm excited and impressed with a lot of these teams. UAB for me, off the bat, guys, I have to talk about that that loss against UTSA, almost a win. I mean, that was impressive and probably the most a conference team has competed with them all season. Justin, I know you have a team that you've been really impressed with this season. Break them down for me.
Well, Western Kentucky is a team that me and Connor, we have raved about this team all season long. They started slow on the season, 1-4. Kind of the theme in Conference USA was all these slow starts. But 1-4 for Western Kentucky. Everybody wrote this team off. They're looking at the record. They see the 4 losses. They see the 1 win. They don't think highly of this team. Those 4 losses were a 3-point loss at Army, a 2-point loss to Indiana, who's obviously in the Power 5, a loss at Michigan State, who's still in the rankings, and a 6-point loss to UTSA, who's obviously undefeated and still in the rankings. So it's not like they were losing to bad teams here in this stretch of games at all. But since that 1-4 start, they've won 6 straight games in absolute dominating fashion. Over these last 6 games, they've averaged a margin of victory of 25.5 points in every single game. They have steamrolled everyone in Conference USA that they have played besides UTSA. And if you like to watch offense, watch Western Kentucky. They have the 3rd best offense in the entire nation, and they're led by a quarterback in Bailey Zappi, who by far leads the nation in both passing yards and touchdown passes. He's got over 4,600 yards this season and 48 touchdowns. He leads the 2nd place passer in both of those categories by 500 yards and 10 touchdowns. So he's gonna end up on top of the nation in both yards and touchdowns when everything is done. Western Kentucky has kind of been quietly in Conference USA, just steamrolling teams, building some momentum, and now they're in a position today where if they beat Marshall, they win the East Division. So that'll be a huge game.
And that's a team that we've been watching and a quarterback that we've been watching for 2 years now develop. So that's definitely a team that is impressive. But Justin, I know there's another team that you wanted to touch on.
Well, it's their opponent, Marshall, today. Marshall has really improved over these last few months. They were another team that started slow in Conference USA, 2-3 after some really close losses to begin the year. But they've won 5 out of their last 6, including that blowout win over UNT in Denton. Since that 28-point blowout win over UNT last month, they have won games by 38, 15, and 21 points. They have been handling business since they came to Denton. Grant Wells, their quarterback, back at the start of the year, if you remember on our show, he was one of the players that I was saying watch him in Conference USA. He had a lot more on his plate this year with their do-it-all running back Brendan Knox graduating over the offseason, leaving a lot more was going to be on his plate. He had the slow start to the year as Marshall struggled. He sort of struggled, but has now completed 66% of his passes on the year and is 10th in the nation with 3,300 passing yards. Now, he does have 12 interceptions and has struggled with turnovers. That's kind of been what's holding him back as a quarterback recently. But obviously going against Bailey Zappi today, Marshall has a chance to repeat in the East Division as champion. So we'll see who wins that game today.
And take the over in that game as well. So.
That'll be a lot of fun. Ton of points coming.
So Jalen, beside UTSA, because I know that's a team obviously that's impressed everyone across the country this year, who has impressed you in Conference USA this season?
Well, UAB has impressed me the most out of anyone. They lost to people they lost to teams that they were supposed to lose to, Georgia, Liberty, UTSA. I don't know how they lost to Rice. Maybe I feel like they had big heads, but they were expected to lose these games because of the fact of how big these schools are, how good these schools showed to be this year, and they even shut out one of the worst possible teams to play in the CUSA, which is Southern Miss. UAB was actually one of the closest to beating UTSA this season, who is still undefeated, and they even had the lead going into half this weekend, but they showed just how balanced they were in this game. The game was pretty even, and they lost in the last second due to a tipped pass, and even in that last play, they showed just how good their defense worked because the defender tipped the pass and it was caught. So I don't think that's on them. That's just great offense for UTSA.
I mean, it was great concentration by the tight end because he was kind of like leaning, and then he was able to still focus and cradle the ball and make sure the ball didn't hit the ground to have an incomplete pass. So give credit to the UTSA player as well because that was really good defense, as you mentioned.
Definitely.
UAB just has to be beating themselves up coming off of that loss. They have the chance to clinch the West Division more or less with that win last week. They led the entire game. They won that game in every single form of the game other than the final score. They didn't trail until the final 3 seconds. As you mentioned, heartbreaking way to end not end their season, but to end their hopes of winning the division.
When you have a really good team against a really good team, I've always said if there's like a short yardage situation and you have a chance to end and close the game and get the chance to run a quarterback's favorite play, which is kneeling the ball. UAB had a 4th and inches with about a minute and a half to go, and they decide to punt to UTSA, whose offense has been fantastic this year. I know the field position would have been tilted in UAB's favor, but they're up by 4 at the time. So if you get the first down, you win the game. And UTSA didn't have any timeouts left, but they decided to take a delay of game and punt the ball. That's a conservative call from Bill Clark, but in my opinion, if you think you're the better team and you have a chance to just go a few inches, to me, if you think you're the better team, then you should get a few inches. If you punt the ball in that scenario, you are telling me you don't believe in your team getting a few inches, which is sad in my opinion. So conservative call by Bill Clark, but from UAB. But I do think UAB's been one of the most consistent teams in Conference USA, and I don't want to totally be negative towards UAB. They have been so consistent. 2018, they won the conference. 2019, they were last in returning production, but still found their way back to the Conference USA Championship. And then last year found themselves in the Conference USA Championship and were underdogs to Marshall on the road and beat Marshall. So they've still been very consistent, and let's face it, they almost beat UTSA. They were literally a few seconds away from beating UTSA, who's been one of the Cinderella stories of this year, and UTSA is undefeated. And UTSA is, in my opinion, going to be facing Western Kentucky in the Conference USA Championship game, which would be the second time those two have faced each other this year. And Western Kentucky, UAB came close to beating UTSA. Western Kentucky arguably gave UTSA their best game because there was no chance in that game, if you were watching the film, UTSA could not stop Western Kentucky. The only thing that stopped Western Kentucky from winning that game was self-imposed penalties, and they've been getting better with lesser amount of penalties as the season has progressed.
So guys, among these teams then moving forward into next season, who do you guys see in the best position?
I think it's still UAB and Bill Clark because I'm not sure how long UTSA can keep the success. We talked about it a couple months ago. They're a super senior team. They're going to be losing a majority of their production. It doesn't mean that you can't recruit well. Jeff Traylor, the head coach for UTSA, he knows the state of Texas very well. He's very well respected from a lot of high school coaches. So he understands how to recruit the state of Texas. He's going to be able to get another set of guys there, but they're losing too much for 1 year. This is a super senior team. They're going to be losing probably close to about 65% of their production, which is way too much for one season. And there's a lot of teams, a lot of those super senior teams who are going to be losing a lot, but UTSA is going to be one of them. I think UAB is best set up for the future. I don't think Bill Clark is going to move up the coaching carousel just yet. He's already had his chance. He's already had his chance to do that. He stayed in Birmingham, and I think UAB is still going to be the team to beat in the West. As we saw, UAB was literally a few seconds away, actually a few inches away from still being a Cinderella team in UTSA on the road, which UAB struggles a little bit on the road. So it just tells me that UAB is still here for the long run.
Okay, well, we've gotten into those 5 teams that have already secured that bowl position, but there's also 5 teams on the bubble, UNT included. Guys, who do you see most likely to make it into a bowl after this today?
Well, this is awesome because everyone's playing each other. So no matter what, we're going to have at least 2 more bowl-eligible teams from Conference USA. Old Dominion is the 5-win team that I'm looking at going into this weekend. They're a fun team. They intentionally use 2 quarterbacks on a regular basis, Hayden Wolf and DJ Mack Jr. DJ Mack Jr. is more of they'll bring him in and run packages, kind of run some read options with him, get him on the move. But both the guys can throw the ball downfield pretty well. Their defense also very solid, only giving up 26.5 points a game. But here's where it gets interesting with Old Dominion. When you compare their schedules to UNT, these are mirror images of each other. Both teams are 5-6 now after having just brutal non-conference schedules at the start of the season and starting with 1-6 records. Old Dominion opened the season at Wake Forest. They played at Liberty, a team we obviously played at home, and they played against Buffalo, who's a pretty good team from the MAC. So UNT got, UTEP, Marshall at home. Old Dominion had to go to those places. So I think the schedules match up very interestingly, and they're kind of mirror images of each other. So Old Dominion's kind of, started slow like UNT, fire the coach, all that talk. They've improved now, and now they're going for bowl eligibility against a very weak Charlotte defense. So I like their chances to get that win too.
Well, that's right. Those teams will be taking each other on, and it'll determine who gets that bowl position. But another game today will determine UNT's bowl position if they can make it. Stay with us, and we will preview that game.
Here we go. We're going to go out there in the rain. It's going to get wet. All right, here we go. Okay, quick. Oh, yeah. Yes. so much fun. Mwah. We're getting so wet.
Bye-bye.
Get home safe.
Hi. Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert. Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably gonna turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right.
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him.
So there you are, shuffling through a stack of resumes and you come to mine. This is it, first impression, my way in. But can my resume show you how I truly stand out? Like that I was studying, going to night school while working 2 jobs just to help my parents pay for groceries. Or being the first one to always step up. No, that's something you just can't put on paper. Look beyond the resume and discover new ways to develop great talent that is dedicated, hardworking, and determined like me.
Hi there and welcome back to Mean Green Game Day. Thanks for staying with us so far. Now, we were just talking about some teams on the bubble of being bowl eligible. Well, UNT could be bowl eligible after today when we take on 11-0 UTSA Roadrunners. Now, they've been making national headlines all season long, rightfully so. But how do we feel realistically about UNT going into this? We are coming off a 4-game win streak. Could UTSA overlook us?
They could. This is the first time UNT ever gets a ranked opponent coming into Apogee Stadium in the form of your rival UTSA. What more could you ask for than in the last game of the season, a high-stakes rivalry game for both teams with a ranked UTSA involved? Awesome stuff here. UTSA, 3rd best offense and 2nd best defense in Conference USA. They only give up 20 points a game, and they've scored 5 defensive touchdowns. They have a multitude of ways that they can beat you. If one part of this team comes slacking for UNT, UTSA will exploit it. We know UNT loves to run the ball, have a great run game, the 4th best rushing attack in the entire nation. UTSA is going to counter with the 10th best run defense in the entire nation. They give up 3 yards a carry and less than 102 rushing yards a game. I think as far as UNT's chances go, for UNT to have a chance in this game, they're going to have to find a way to run the ball against this very stout UTSA run defense.
How do you guys feel about UTSA's big year going into this? Is this too much of a threat for UNT? Do you guys see UNT just starting off completely down and out, no momentum at all?
Well, we have a lot of momentum coming into this game. For one, it's a rivalry game, and I don't care what your record is. If it's a rivalry, throw out the stats. Both teams are going to come ready to play. They both want to beat each other. But we're on a 4-game winning streak, which will help in this case. We're confident. And like UTEP started the season confident, and now reality's kind of starting to hit the Miners a little bit more. Well, now UNT is confident coming off that 4-game winning streak. So I think it does play a factor. You need confidence regardless of how good you are on paper. You have to win the game on the field. It's not won just by stats. Now, one thing I will say about UTSA, if they weren't undefeated right now, then I would say there would be a potential for them to look ahead of the Conference USA Championship, more worried about that than their record. But because they're undefeated, I don't really think this is as much of a look ahead, because now they're not just playing for our Conference USA Championship, but they're playing for an undefeated season.
Now, earlier this season, we were talking about how impactful the coaching has been for this team. And Jeff Traylor was a big name in a lot of swirling rumors about other teams looking for coaches. Texas Tech, he would have fit right in. But now he signed a $28 million deal till 2031 with this team. Do y'all see him sticking through with this team moving forward?
Well, if UTSA continues to be ranked and continues to have undefeated, successful seasons, he probably will go for a bigger job. And this is we talked about with Grant McCaslin, our basketball coach, building a program with success. Jeff Traylor has kind of done the same thing down there at UTSA. And you got to think, like you said, Texas Tech, Baylor might be looking for a coach in the future, or associate head coach that maybe replace Joey McGuire. So lots of open spots around the state of Texas that Traylor could potentially go to. But the fact that he signed that extension 10 years, he clearly has bought into what they have going there in San Antonio.
Well, and the thing is, Traylor has bought into that city as well. After the game at the Alamo Dome last weekend, his security was like, we have to get you out of here. This is a danger. They were rushing the field, and he said, no, I want to be here. He told everyone, he took as many selfies as he could because it's all about this city. Now that game coming this weekend, or not this weekend, the game coming the following weekend for the championship game is not supposed to be free for students. He is partnering with a bunch of businesses all over the city of San Antonio so that students for UTSA can go to that game for free. I see this guy sticking around with this program for quite some time, and that's how you build good culture. Speaking of good culture, they have good players. Let's hit on some key players for this team. Justin, who should we watch today?
Well, UTSA has not, you can't say they've been successful because of their strength of schedule, first of all. They have gone undefeated through a very good and pretty brutal schedule. They have wins on the road at Illinois. They have a win at Memphis. They won at Western Kentucky, like we talked about earlier. They won at UTEP and obviously beat UAB last week to win the East Division. So they deserve to be ranked. I mean, that is a murderer's row of a schedule that they just went right through, defeated all these teams, steamrolled everyone in Conference USA pretty much, other than Western Kentucky, who gave them a run. But this is going to be the best offense that UNT, one of the best offenses that UNT goes against all year. They're only a couple spots above UNT in terms of total offense, but this is an offense that is very multidimensional. They can beat you through the air, they can beat you on the ground. They run their offense through the running back Sincere McCormick, very similar to what we do here at UNT with running back DeAndre Torrey. He's 8th in the country, Sincere McCormick is, and leading Conference USA with 1,200 rushing yards on the season. He scored 12 touchdowns. He averages nearly 5 yards a carry, and in 7 out of the last 11 games has gone over 100 yards. So they're, instead of UNT, like we're going to use 4 running backs. We're going to run out a bunch of different guys. They're going to run the ball with Sincere McCormick. They're going to ride him to success. But, you know, if he struggles, they have Frank Harris, their quarterback Frank Harris, there to back him up. He's completed 67% of his passes this season, over 2,600 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Frank Harris has really settled into this offense nicely now in his third season with Jeff Traylor. Clearly knows the offense well and has some great chemistry with all of these receivers. I have talked about this duo, Frank Harris, Sincere McCormick, so much on the show, and rightfully so. They've been so impressive. They deserve the ranking, and they deserve all the love, even though they're our rival. They deserve everything.
No, I agree, and having a duo like that is really big for a team's success, but it's not just about offense with this team. I mean, last week, linebacker Clarence Hicks had a huge game. He recorded 3 tackles for loss, a pair of sacks, and he has 14 tackles for loss and 8 sacks on the season for this team. He ranks 15th naturally and 2nd in the conference. He's going to be a big threat to our pocket. We have to protect Austin Ani today. Who's your key player, Jalen?
Oh, my key player? Well, I always have to go back home to my Cedar Hill roots. My key player will be Zachary Franklin. You know, he's done absolutely amazing this season with 64 receptions for 847 yards, 10 touchdowns, averaging 13.2 yards a catch. This kid is absolutely amazing. Anything, you know, if we do anything on defense today, it is make sure that he does not get open. He has been their leading receiver for the past 3 seasons, and if there's a major duo in quarterback and receiver, it's going to be Frank Harris and Zachary Franklin, and that's what the Mean Green is going to have to tighten up against today, as we face them.
No, I totally agree. UNT is going to have to play really, really hard if they want even the slightest chance. So, Connor, what are the keys to the game, matchups to watch for this team, for UNT to have any kind of chance?
Well, it's something that UNT has done a really good job as of late is stop the run, but we haven't done quite as good of a job on the back end to stop the pass. So 2 players that I think UNT will have to key on, or at least make an importance of from this past week to make sure that they are well prepared today against UTSA, is watch out for the receiving duo for UTSA of Zachary Franklin, like Jalen mentioned, and Joshua Cephas. Both of these guys have 64 receptions exactly, and they have over 1,500 yards receiving combined between the two, and they have 16 touchdowns. So it's not just Zachary Franklin. Joshua Cephas can also do a lot of damage to the secondary, and with UNT's secondary being the question mark on defense, they're going to have to make sure that they have those 2 guys keyed on. And it's hard to key on 2 different receivers. If you can key on one, you can play man coverage with one and kind of shift your safeties to make sure that they have help in the back end. But when you have 2 guys who can take the top off of defense, it makes it more difficult for the secondary. So UNT's defense, specifically the back end, will have to make sure that they can contain those guys and at least keep them in front of them, because those two guys can go up and get the ball over two guys at one time.
Well, just like any of our shows, we have to give you guys a prediction, but we're going to do it just this game today. Now, I think it might be a little bit more obvious who we are all going for, but I am going to go with the Roadrunners today because this is an impressive team, and I've liked watching them all season. They've got UNT.
Yeah, I think UNT can keep it close. Like I said, if they find a way to run the ball, maybe get Alcinani into some situations where he can use the play action and take those deep shots, I think UNT has a chance. But I think in the end, UTSA is just the better team. Unbeaten, they've really obviously looked good against everyone in Conference USA. We're a middle of the pack team in Conference USA, so I like their chances here.
Well, personally, after going through all of these games, we had started off hard, and now the schedule has gotten easy, and we're right back into another one of those games to where we don't know how it's going to. Well, we know how it's going to end up. Well, I'm going to go for UTSA.
I'm going to say UTSA wins. If UTSA had lost already this season, maybe they'd be looking ahead of the CUSA Championship, not worried about an undefeated season. But with them, of course, being undefeated coming into this game, I don't think there's any look ahead. Hopefully UNT can stay with them. It's a rivalry. Anything can happen, but I'm going to go with the Roadrunners to stay undefeated.
Well, we've seen UNT improve all season, and hopefully the improvements continue today, whether it be a win or just some good football to watch.
It's the ultimate test right here.
Alrighty.
Ultimate test.
Yep, you're right, Justin. Okay, well, it's senior day today at Apogee Stadium. 14 players will be recognized, and you can watch the game at 1 p.m. on ESPN3 or go to the game. It's going to be beautiful. Thanks for joining us this season, and thanks to our crew for helping us out. It wouldn't be anything without y'all. We'll see you guys again next season.